we were in Italy and we were staying in an Airbnb, and I woke up, but my friend hadn't slept. So, like, just had a restless night, was on YouTube, browsing YouTube, saw it, watched the video, went to bed, and when we woke up in the morning, the first thing sort of she said at breakfast was, "Oh, Logan Paul put a video up, and there seems to be some backlash over it." And then we kind of were like, "Well, what was in the video?" She said, "Well, he filmed a dead body." And everyone around the table was quiet for like a second, and then I think someone said, "Oh, made sense."
Oh, God. Hey, Future Bing. This is a video I've been putting off making. I've been putting it off for, I think, very understandable reasons. It's not a fun subject. It's not fun stuff to talk about. And before we go any further, I should probably mention, like a trigger warning, I should probably let you know that I am going to be discussing Logan Paul. I am going to be discussing the incident in the forest with the suicide victim. So if that upsets you or offends you, please just, you know, don't. But I think it would be a massive oversight of me if I didn't talk about the state of YouTube right now, and I didn't talk about that very big and very important event that happened at the beginning of the year. So that's what this video is about. I'm going to try and dissect that event, and I'm going to try and talk about YouTube and the future of YouTube and where it's going, and make some predictions. A little preface or qualifier, if you will, before we start talking about Logan Paul. When he's not being a disrespectful asshole, Logan Paul is an entertaining creator. I can see the appeal. He oozes energy. He seeks out weird situations. He lives in a way that his viewers can't. It's privilege porn, and he is very good at it. I've also taken some time to watch the entire Suicide Forest video. And although there is a lot in poor taste, and it should not have been uploaded, particularly given the age of his audience, he does actually take a moment or two to unpack the situation. He laughs and jokes after the shock has passed, but he also talks about it being a coping mechanism. And you only have to jump back to the original PBFB to see Mandy and Jamie and I doing the same kind of thing after Ed's funeral. Death is weird, and when it touches your life, your reaction is unpredictable. Also, and we'll get into this towards the end of the video, I recognize that the Logan Paul situation is symptomatic of a much, much bigger problem. There are huge issues with online video and with the community that surrounds it that are nothing to do with Logan Paul. He's just the most recent and one of the most horrible examples. And I fully recognize that his notoriety makes him a kind of icon that can be used to push particular agendas or ideas. Hell, I'm doing it right now. I'm going to have a lot of my own opinions in this video, and I'm using Logan Paul as a stepping off point. The only difference being I had the chance to make this video while it was topical, and I chose to put it in a time capsule for a year's time when it's not going to be relevant. So here is the timeline of events surrounding the Logan Paul incident. December 31st, 2017. Logan, Andy, Melissa, Brendan, and their Japanese security guard go to the Sea of Trees, ostensibly for a 24-hour overnight camping trip. The forest has a reputation for being haunted, so they're going to spend one spooky night in the wilderness. A few minutes after leaving the path, which they shouldn't have done, they come across the hanging body of someone who has taken their own life. They continue to film the experience, call the police, and end up not camping in the forest. Back out in the parking lot, Logan speaks to the camera a bit more and freaks out, quite understandably. Some fans visiting the forest with their family recognize him and want to take pictures. He wraps up the video with a clumsy message to anyone who is in trouble that they reach out to someone, and then follows it with the usual calls to action. The video is then uploaded.
I was hoping that sort of the reaction to it would be different, but I think that was an optimism that's falsely applied to YouTube. His core audience doesn't care.
January 1st, 2018. He uploads the next episode of his Tokyo adventure. One small mention of what happens in the forest, but generally things are back to normal. January 2nd, 2018. Responding to overwhelming backlash, Logan uploads a video called So Sorry. Its runtime is 1 minute and 44 seconds, and although it is not the worst apology in the world, it's also not the best.
I don't think you will be able to convince them. I think what convinced them after the fact that it's okay to stick with him is the video he made afterwards, which didn't work on me because I was never his core audience, so it's fine. I do think there are some things that you should be able to redeem yourself. There should be a way for you to make an apology and, I guess, recover in some ways. Whether or not he's done that correctly, I mean, we'll see.
Then Logan takes almost a month off from daily videos. January 24th, 2018, Logan uploads a video called Suicide: Be Here Tomorrow. It features interviews with a couple of notable suicide activists and one famous suicide attempt survivor. There are stats and numbers and emotional music. It's a bit of an amateur job, but considering the source, it handles the material relatively well. February 4th, 2018, Logan uploads a video called Logan Paul is back, in all caps. Apart from a weird, slightly misguided opening sequence where he washes up on a beach with a fake beard, it's just an update video. He's back to his usual shenanigans, although he does clumsily talk about what has happened and how it's affected him. February 5th, 2018, Logan uploads The Pauls Respond to the CSI Fight, a pretty standard video blog which contains a scene where he decides to shoot a taser gun at dead rats that his dog left on the porch. Now at this point, after already having taken him off Google Preferred, YouTube removes Logan Paul's ads altogether. They cite repeated violations of the community guidelines. The move also seems motivated by PR concerns. YouTube at this point is becoming synonymous with Logan Paul. People think YouTube, they think Logan Paul, and then they think dead people and animals. For half of the developed world, this is becoming the identity of YouTube's brand. So in response, they get a lot more vocal about it. The CEO, Susan Wojcicki, makes a public statement about it. They roll out new rules for creators and videos announcing and explaining those rules, and they cancel Logan Paul's upcoming YouTube Red series. Fast forward to the end of the month, February 26th, 2018. YouTube announces that soon Logan Paul will have monetization returned to him, but they are adamant that he is still on probation. They've talked with him and his team to make sure that they fully understand the community guidelines and the terms of use. And most of Logan's content will now probably run through a lawyer or a publicist before it is uploaded. And for the time being, he is still barred from recommendations and other discovery functions. And that's kind of it as far as Logan is concerned. He will go back to his daily vlogging treadmill and he will continue to make money. He might be toxic to a lot of brands and studios for the time being, but we live in a world where influence is valuable, and where a rich, famous, straight white man can bounce back from pretty much anything.
He's in a very privileged position. He's sort of the epitome of privilege, because he's white and he's famous and he has a lot of money and he's a guy, and in a lot of people's eyes, he can do no wrong. And those people will stick with him. And on YouTube, being that size of a creator, that's a heck of a lot of people. And you have to, if you have that kind of consumer power behind you, an audience, it's very hard for this to have an incredible impact. I mean, it took years for this Hollywood thing to come down. So making one video isn't going to kick his career. It's not going to change much about YouTube. If anything, him and his brother have proven that you can push YouTube to the extreme.
There is a kind of twisted dimension to this which I find funny. For the time being, studios, brands, companies, they're not going to want to work with him. So Logan's actually trapped on YouTube. Logan belongs to them, because if he stops vlogging and stops promoting his merch on the #1 platform where he promotes his merch, he loses his house. He loses his cash flow. He's dependent on his ability to reach his YouTube audience.
I think that like these guys and people similar to them are just a symptom of ongoing issues that have just continuously not been addressed or kind of ignored in not just how the YouTube industry operates, but also just how we view fan culture. Because, you know, I've been around long enough now. I've seen a good number of creators fall from grace, or were already kind of shitty, but were forgiven instantly by the fans that they'd accumulated because your fave can never be seen as problematic in some people's eyes. Like, and even as early as like 2010 or 11, you kind of see that culture start to seep in with creators who are less interested in like connecting with their creative peers and more interested in seeing how many people they can get in an event and then crowd surf on those people and things like that. Like the fan culture has sort of, it's not it's not the fans' fault. Like they are sort of, again, a symptom of a greater issue of the industry expanding, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this properly.
Yeah, I
but
mean, you do see it in every other industry, in any creative or entertainment industry as well. But it seems particularly like extreme on the internet. But that's not where the conversation ends for me. This spreads and spills over into so many other discussions. But if I had to boil this whole thing down to just two main speaking points, they would be: 1, the horrible compounding effect of a journalism sector run by advertising. And 2, a very serious discussion that needs to be ongoing about the role of regulation in online video. Let's look at the first one. I think we can generally agree that we all like a free press, one that isn't censored or controlled by third parties or government oversight. And in the Western world, generally, very broadly speaking, we have this. But it's also private enterprise, which means they need to make profit and see consistent financial growth in order to be successful. And I'm not saying anything new at this point. Outlets have always needed to compete for market share, to sell papers or subscriptions, and it affects the way that they make their product, the way that they write their stories. But nowadays, more and more of it is tied to advertising revenue, with most outlets being free or at least freemium. That condenses the time frame of incentive and action. It makes it more immediate and measurable. When something gets read more, it earns more money. And you can see it happening in near real time. Interestingly, one of the best comments made about this was from PewDiePie, defending himself after his racist joke scandal. Being the biggest YouTuber on the platform, and by any standard, a legitimate celebrity, at least among the demographic that he serves, he is a target. If you write something attacking PewDiePie, it will get clicks. That's not to say that there wasn't stuff to write about, but it also explains why so many outlets got involved and so many articles were written, often very hastily. When someone like Logan or Felix does something bad, it's a gold rush. And there is a mad dash to write about it and capitalize on it in that window where you can make the most money. That's how you get institutions like Forbes and Business Insider writing simplistic slam pieces about a YouTuber. Since when was that their business? Since it started paying. And inevitably, with any gold rush comes fool's gold. The story gets simplified or twisted as everyone and their dog starts writing articles about it without doing their due diligence. And it serves to unreasonably amplify the story. In both cases, Felix making poor taste Nazi jokes and Logan filming a suicide victim's body, as weird as it sounds, I think the whirlwind of news surrounding them made the acts seem far worse, more heinous, more calculated, more evil than they were. It served to caricature them and shape a newer, more sensational narrative than either perpetrator deserved. And I want to clarify again here before I get any comments about it, I think both things were bad. They should not have done these nasty things. I'm just taking issue right now with the scale of the response and questioning the agenda behind it.
Do you think YouTube needs to be regulated?
Regulated is a strange one. I think YouTube needs to get better at self-regulating, mainly. They say, oh, we're trying so hard to help filter out things, but it's not really working ever. So much still gets through. You know, you get ads on alt-right vids. If that doesn't happen, it might have to be the case that they get a third party in. But at the moment, I think let's give them a little bit more time, maybe.
Now, a bit about the second point, and there is a lot more to unpack here than I can fit into one video, so I apologize if it is a little simplistic at times. I'm hoping you can follow up on this specifically, Future Bing. On it, do we need regulation on YouTube? Is regulation on YouTube inevitable? I think the answer to both is yes, and I think YouTube knows it. The bigger picture here doesn't place Logan at the center of anything. He is a trigger. He is a point on a graph. In hindsight, we can comfortably say that this kind of thing was going to happen sooner or later. It was just a matter of time. It could have been anyone or anything. It could have taken any form. And we didn't know it until it happened. It just happened to be this, and now the wound is here and we need to treat it. Again, advertising is one of the key factors here. YouTube's business model runs on ads, which means at least partly they are at the mercy of their advertisers. Something we saw demonstrated about a year ago with the adpocalypse. A scandal happens and they, the advertisers, are able to flex their muscles and withdraw their spend, only to come back to the table with new terms. Business of this kind and on this scale is a tug of war, an ongoing negotiation, and scandals and public outrage present opportunities, which should make you question even more the motivations for jumping on the bandwagon with high-profile cases. But advertisers making noise and lobbying the platform isn't regulation. When we're talking about regulation, we're talking about third-party regulatory bodies, government-appointed, who set standards for broadcast and advertising. We've seen advertising watchdogs get involved in recent years, particularly when it comes to disclosing and flagging influencer sponsorships. But that's only the start. If YouTube want to continue down the path they've set for themselves, we will eventually need more structured guidelines and regulations that affect partnered and preferred creators. And they know that. They almost certainly know that. And it scares them. The conspiracy theorist in me wants to suggest that the only reason Susan Wojcicki and other top brass from YouTube got involved in the first place is because they are terrified of regulation. They need to be seen as effectively self-regulating, to be taking active and responsible measures, because otherwise scandals of this magnitude will eventually attract the attention of regulators, governments, and lawmakers. They know that day is coming, and in order to comply, it's going to cost them millions or billions in development, in legal costs, in personnel, in infrastructure, and they want to put it off for as long as they can. But those are just my thoughts on the subject. It is a huge can of worms, and I don't think I have offered any answers or solutions here. I just wanted to make as good a record as I could of this strange and unusual time in our industry and our community. Partly because I worry that in a year's time we might have forgotten. We might have forgotten that a YouTuber walked off a path in a forest and filmed the body of a suicide victim, uploaded it, and is more popular than ever. We might have forgotten that YouTube themselves opened the floodgates that put Honda ads next to ISIS beheadings when they indiscriminately allowed all channels to monetize their videos. A mistake that they've only just now rolled back. We might have forgotten that the news we read is driven by advertising, and that if we want the full story, we should probably do our own research. And in a year's time, I really don't know how things will have changed. Maybe they haven't at all. Maybe there are now age ratings next to every YouTube video. Let me know, Future Bing.